What's up, everybody? I'm Eddie Lager. That's Carlos. That's Noah, I think. I don't know. We're here tonight because there's a lot going on in this country and just in general right now, especially in my life. We're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff. It seems like the crises our nation is going through just seem to escalate and escalate and escalate, and we don't get a minute to catch our breaths. And I think that's a problem. We seem to be heading for some really, really tough times, and I hope we're ready for them. We're going to talk about all that. We're going to talk about how my work is screwing me over and a whole lot more right after this.
High Sheriff Hazard is a hard man to be. High Sheriff is his only plan. He digs through pockets, takes what he can, for he's High Sheriff Hazard. He caught me one evening, and here's what he said. You look like a Russian, you look like a red. And if you're fond of your skin and your head, beware the High Sheriff of Hazard. The answer is simple, the answer is clear. We all get together, ain't got nothing to fear. We throw the old bastard right out on his ear. Farewell to High Sheriff Hazard.
All right, what's up, guys? It's good to be with you today. It's a little bit rare that we get everyone together. I won't be able to be here for much longer than an hour because I have wrestling practice, of course, but it's great to sit down with some of the OG Midwestern Marxists here and hash out all the crap that's going on in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. The streams that we do, the three of us, are the most fun. And, I'm happy to be here with you all in general. We had a couple really fun streams last week. I was on vacation. I was able to hang out in person with Eddie and join his streaming studio in person. And, I had this interesting adventure on the way back. I got caught in the middle of a snowstorm that's taking a hold of the Midwest. And, for a few moments there in the drive on the highway with 18-wheelers flying by you as you literally cannot see anything and are just sort of skating around on your car, unable to control it, I was like, shit, I don't know if I'll ever be able to stream again. But thankfully, I was able to make it okay to some place in Missouri. And, I'm just grateful to be here now with all of you.
Yeah, it seems like we never get a chance to. We're all so busy these days, that we never get a chance to hang out like this anymore. And this is kind of how it all started, right? So it's good to be back with the three Marxist amigos.
Absolutely.
As you can tell, I'm the Hispanic one.
Yes.
With my awesome accent. Yeah, I'm telling you guys, and I'll get into this maybe in a little bit, but it's been rough in Noah world lately. Well, as these guys know, but you guys, the audience, may not know.
Yeah, let's start with that. Tell us
Okay,
what's
we
been
can do
going
that.
on.
So,
Oh, and thank you, David. Thank you so
The
much,
OG
David. Great to
Patreon.
see you
David.
as well, comrade.
now it's really like old times with David here.
Yeah.
So, for anyone who doesn't know this, I'm a Finnish carpenter, right? I've worked in the finishing trades for decades now. That's just what I do. Because of that, my hands are basically like one giant callus. My kid actually, when he was little, used to like complain that my hands were too scratchy when I would hug him, right? Or pick him up.
Proletarian hands.
Yeah. But so I've been working for this smaller type of business for the last maybe 14, 15 years. And years ago, we started we called it like a mini union or a workers alliance because it wasn't really official. It didn't get that far. Like with the ownership, we worked out a really good deal. But then around COVID, that organization started falling apart. We ran out of money. This year or last year, 2024, we had a ton of money trouble. So it just disintegrated, right? And trust me, any organization you're in can break over money. Make sure when you're organizing, everyone is upfront about everything and you guys can trust each other, all that. So
Transparency.
a few months ago, one of the main like pro management side people got it in for me, right? And probably because I'm one of the primary organizers, right? But she I used to work with her and she was fine. She was an estimator. But she just got a problem with me out of nowhere and tried to come after my job, right? This obviously didn't work when she brought it up. Someone in another division are like, Noah, what are you talking about? He's one of our best guys. We'll take him in commercial, right? So I switched divisions and everything's smooth sailing. This division's run by two guys, right? One of them that is another one of the organizers, so the owners don't like, and the other one who is one of the best salesmen and nicest guys you'll ever meet. That's who the owners like. A couple weeks ago, like right before Christmas, actually, he got a better job offer, like a way better job offer. So he left, right? And while so when we get back from the Christmas break, we find out that this woman who tried to get me fired in the past now got put in charge of the division I transferred into to get away from her. Right? So immediately, she starts messing with me. My like just bad. And today they sort of did the the 2 and the 1-2 combo, right? They set me up and then they just knocked me down. I had my compensation meeting out of nowhere, unable to prepare for it. And they demoted me and like everything good about my job is ending now. So I'm gonna have to go work all over, no longer doing what I'm good at, no longer really. It's just really sad to see like you put so much time and energy into something. Like I'm the guy people trust at this place, right? I go all around helping other teams out. I can't do that anymore. I'm no longer even managing projects. I'm stuck on one team, right? So obviously that didn't work. And it seems as if they couldn't grab my job, so they're trying to push me out, right? And that's for me just a sign of when people talk positively about communism and all you got to do is just be good at your job and you'll make all kinds of money. This is one of the many, many, many examples of why that's bullshit. That is not the case. There are always people like this lady. There are always people that will get some bug up their ass about you and literally try to ruin your life, because that's exactly what she's doing for no good reason. So what little patience I had is now gone. This is amidst all kinds of other drama I'm going through. So like, it's like when it rains, it pours, right?
And can I say to what you just said, that's, the best employee from their perspective isn't necessarily the one who does the most high quality work the most efficiently. The
Right.
best employee is a sheep, somebody who's not going to rock the boat, somebody who's going to kiss ass and embrace that Protestant work, a tainted, manipulated form of the Protestant work ethic, which says that, no matter how much you're getting screwed over by the people in authority, that they've been put there in that position for a reason by God, and you just need to shut up, put your head down, and work your butt off for them. And that's the kind of easily exploited employee that they really want.
No
And
kidding.
what's interesting is that like Noah at least has the benefit of having a framework that understands the consequences of challenging the interests of the bosses, that understands why this happens. Because if you're a regular worker who has no Marxist framework that you're operating with on an everyday basis, how do you end up reacting to something like this? You spontaneously recognize, okay, I have to do this, it's for my interest, and then you get squashed in this disgusting manner. A lot of people take it personally. They end up thinking there's something wrong with me, I have messed up, I'm not worthy, I'm not this, and they end up individualizing the effects of something that are rooted at a systemic level. So at least Noah can look at it and understand, this is the system, this is how it works, I'm not the only one, it's not my fault, it's how the system works, and it's what's done to any working class person that even in the slightest way says, I'm going to stand up for my interests as a worker. There's a lot of people who don't have that ability to understand that some of them are hit perhaps even harder, because they're like, fuck, it's my fault, I'm unworthy, and this happened because of me, and now I'm going to shut up whenever I go to the next workplace.
What really, really grinds my gears, you're absolutely right, Carlos. What really grinds my gears about this, look, I'm a guy that doesn't call off, right? I never shirk my job and put it on someone else. I'm helping other people. I'm a pretty loyal guy. When I commit to something, I commit to it, and that's all there is to it. Like, I'm going to die in the American Communist Party. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a loyal person, and it seems as if my loyalty is repaid with constant disrespect, escalated, right? Like last year, because the organization wasn't up and running, everybody was pissed after their compensation meeting, right? So I don't make a lot, right? So last year, my compensation meeting didn't go very well, and I told them about it, right? I'm like, look, this is under the poverty line where we live. I'm not asking for anything unreasonable. I'm not even asking for what's fair. I'm just asking for not poverty, right? I don't think that's too much to ask. And it's like all bosses are. There's always some excuse, right? Well, they're buying boats and investing in new properties and expanding their fleet, blah, 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 right? So they're like, well, you pull up your hours in this and that, and we'll talk in the middle of the year, right? Guess what happened in the middle of the year? I switched divisions. So that next meeting to reassess, of course it didn't happen. And so what happens this time? Same exact thing. When I looked at the compensation, I was like, this increase is a joke. It's not even up to the standard of living in Ohio. And I show the guy, the owner that I'm having the meeting with, I show him that MIT has a really nice living wage calculator, right? You can look it up, MIT living wage calculator. I have one kid. I should be making roughly $31 an hour, right? Just to be above the poverty line and be okay. It's not anywhere near that. Let me tell you. And so I'm like, look, why can't we? I don't care what I do. If you don't want me running projects anymore, if she's in your ear, fine. Okay. Make sure, like, repay my loyalty with something, right? Make sure I can take care of my family. And again, oh, well, you do this, this, and this, and we'll reassess. And of course, when it comes time, there'll be some other excuse. And they keep people on the line as long as they can and get as much out of them as they can. And then once they squeeze you dry like a rag you're squeezing all the water out of, they throw you away. And that's where I'm at right now. Basically being thrown away. So hopefully, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, thankfully you have some alternative job prospects now too, right? Because you've been
Yeah.
preparing for this. I mean, you've been talking about this woman who we can call Karen at your work, who's had it out for you for a long time. It's actually a very similar thing to what happened to me at my old workplace. There were a lot of people in the administration who weren't upset about the fact that I did politics. They understood that I was only getting paid $400 a month and that I needed to do something else if I was going to be able to survive. And, they dealt with like the mass email campaigns demanding I be fired and stuff. But there was one lady, an extremely liberal woman, who also lost her job recently. So karma. I usually don't root for people to lose their jobs, but that one made me jump for joy. But she had a vendetta against me for that, and then more so even against our head coach, the person who was my main supervisor, because he was socially conservative. And this was a college that made you sign a pledge basically to do DEI, to hire people and recruit kids to the school based on the color of their skin rather than the content of their character, which is just, tokenizing. And there's a whole bunch wrong with it, but extremely liberal college. And it was just this one lady who had a stick up her ass who got a promotion from year to year and then used her higher position to basically get the entire wrestling staff fired. And now she got fired because the school's in debt and the wrestling program is absolutely awful. They can't even fill a full lineup. Nobody wants to go there because I'm well known in the wrestling community in the Midwest. And I made people aware that this university was a piece of garbage who didn't care about their students or staff. So it is nice that at least we have some kind of ability to fight back through the Midwestern Marx Institute or expose what these people are doing or get payback. But it's crazy how much power under this, capitalist system in the era of, the professional managerial class, how one of these liberal PMC people can just screw over your whole life.
That's always who it is, too.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting in both cases, because what it shows is how the superstructure infiltrates the base, and how at the basic level of your work, when you're participating in the mode of production and relations of production, how the relations of production themselves are in a certain sense mediated by the ideological constructs that it itself determines. I don't know. I don't want to get too theoretical, but Noah's experience is a common experience, I think, for a lot of working class Americans, and the whole purpose of Marxism is to show them, the reasons why what happened to them happened, and how it's not only them, how it's a reality that our whole class faces, and how it doesn't have to be this way. This is why the bourgeoisie doesn't want us thinking in terms of history, because if we pull out history and we look at history, we come to realize that the system we have now arose historically, that wasn't always like this. It wasn't the world wasn't made this way by the gods. It wasn't a biological fact of human history that it's always been this way. No, it arose historically out of a certain lawfulness of human social development. And the same tendency that we saw that produced it, if we follow it to its conclusion and are faithful to its trajectory, shows us that there's a way out and that it won't always be this way. And experiences like this that are so common for our class are they're treasures for us pulling out of them in order to explain the system and how there's a way out, and that they represent the vehicle through which we can find the way out.
Absolutely, brother. I want to pull this up. Frederick's saying he doesn't talk politics at work unless coworkers want to talk politics. I think this is a tricky line to walk for communists, right? A lot of jobs, like one, it's made by our ruling class into a sort of taboo topic to discuss, right? You don't talk religion, you don't talk politics. But I try to skirt around that, honestly, where I say we're not talking politics. You hear us talking any policy or Democrat or Republican. No, of course not. We're talking about worker issues, like working class issues. And that's sort of how I try to go about it. And it works out. Believe it or not, a lot of my coworkers always want to talk politics. I don't know why. Maybe I think I'm known as the guy who knows about geopolitics and stuff at work. So they'll be like, what's really going on with the Russia-Ukraine war? And they'll ask me for like broad explanations, right? Or like, is what the government tells us about China really true? I do have one guy I work with who like is one of those anti-China people and says the wildest stuff and like just like demonstrably false things, but he's so rabid in his belief that he'll just back it up with lies. It's crazy. I remember one time he was telling me like, dude, don't you know that like everywhere you go in China, you have to have somebody with you, like monitoring you, and you're not allowed to take pictures? I'm like, you're not allowed to take pictures in China. That's what you're telling me right now. There's a guy from the government following you everywhere you go. And if you pull out your phone, he goes, no pictures. No, that's crazy. He's like, dude, my son went. He's not lying. I'm like, okay, sure he's not. Like, why would you make something that crazy up? And how can you, a grown man, a smart guy that I know is smart, believe that kind of thing? It's insane to me. I don't get it. You muted, Eddie.
The brainwashing's pretty powerful, when it starts at that young of an age. I mean, it's the same thing when you study the roots of Zionism. It's like, how the hell does anybody buy into this murderous ideology? And you learn that, there's millions and millions of dollars pumped into museums and American curriculums and, writing Zionist stories and twisting Jewish religious traditions into Zionist propaganda. And then, you realize that a lot of young people, young Jewish people grow up, Jewish or non-Jewish people grow up hearing those stories. But, especially Jewish people, they're indoctrinated with Zionist propaganda since birth.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it is hard to overcome that and realize, everything I've been told by my family and my religious elders is actually incorrect and murderous and fascistic. But I mean, that's why Kanafani wrote the book on Zionism to analyze how Zionism had such a hold on the public in the West and the Israeli public. But yeah, I don't know if Carlos had anything else to say about the workplace drama. It's unfortunate to hear about, but I'll give him the floor one more time. But then I want to talk to you guys about the LA wildfires.
Yeah.
No, I didn't have much to add, but as far as that last point, I mean, there are so many myths that we are fed about the history and the current conjuncture concerning socialism. And I think that the best way to approach it is by recognizing that there's already areas where the ideological fabric has been torn by people in a very spontaneous manner. People already understand that the government has lied to them about Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan, COVID, some, especially conservatives in the US, about Russia. And it's fairly easy, once it's broken down in one area, to continue to pull the plug and to, allow them to see, well, if they lied to you here and you understand the reasons why they lied to you in this area, why would you trust them in these other areas? It makes no sense. If you know they lie to you today, why would you trust what they tell you in history books? Why would you trust what they tell you about figures like Stalin and Mao and Fidel Castro and these great heroic figures of the struggle that your class is a part of, whether you like it or not? Don't you think that they have an interest in especially demonizing the people that have been most successful in upholding your class interest, which you recognize already by being distrustful in these areas, that it's in an antagonistic relationship to the people that lie to you and that have an interest in lying you about all these other issues that you recognize that you're being lied to about. So I think that's one of the unique opportunities that we have in the US, where when you have a crisis of legitimacy, it makes it really easy to open up the horizon of what's submitted under the scrutiny of the form of skepticism that contemporary things are put under by the general populace. And as an aside, if you're interested in that history of Stalin, Mao, post Mao China and the figure of Deng and others, I'm currently there's a few spots left for part 2 of my class on Marxism Leninism. It's an 8-week seminar. It's ran every single Thursday at 7 p.m. And for those that for some reason or another are unable to attend, you get a recording of the class and you get to hear the different topics that we're doing. So anything from Stalin's synthesizing of Marxism-Leninism as its own, genuine development of Marxism, to Mao, Deng, Dimitrov on the question of fascism, the question of American Marxism, and lastly, Noah's work on how to be a good communist. You can sign up for it. There's limited spots available, so sign up quick. And it starts next Thursday. So I think it'll be a great experience for those of you that join. The first 8 weeks, we covered just Lenin, and it was a very in-depth study of 4 of Lenin's main books that I'm sure the people that were in that class are going to remember that material for the rest of their life. So don't miss this opportunity. I probably won't do it again for another few years.
Yeah, that's a really, really, really good class for anyone who's kind of on the fence about doing it. I would highly recommend this one. I don't want to get really go on and on about it, but out of all of them, it's probably my favorite. I got a question though. Is there something going on? Is it my browser or is there something wrong with our software? Because I keep seeing our names fade in and out. I
No,
see
it's just
the
you.
it's just
That's
me.
all
Okay.
you.
All right. I'll shut up about it. Thanks, Eddie.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what Carlos is saying is true. I've seen this with a lot of people, but a more high profile example would be Jake Shields. He tweets when he talks about China and Russia now, he doesn't know much about what's going on over there, but he's very positive about them and is questioning, if the US media lies to us about everything, do we think they're telling us the truth about Russia and China? And that was just because Jackson Hinkle and I, tied that together for him. You don't trust the US government. You don't trust what they say about anything. Why would you trust what they say about China and Russia, especially when China and Russia are doing all these different things better than the US and are engaged in, competition with the US, or, even what will likely eventually boil over into a hot war. They're already engaged in World War III essentially against the US. Would you believe everything that the US says about them? And, there's a lot of areas where I would still like to move Jake forward politically, and other things that he says that I don't agree with, that I would, like to get him to change his opinion on. But that's one where I've been successful in Jackson has in getting him to take a different view of Russia and China and use his voice to speak out against imperialism in those countries, which is a positive development. But speaking of China, and the example that China provides for us as communists in the US of what communism can do, and how it looks compared to US capitalism. With the wildfires going on in California right now, I've been thinking about this a lot. And also with the hurricane relief effort that we did with the ACP in North Carolina and all the devastation that came from that. When there is a natural disaster in China, the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, is rapidly mobilized to do disaster relief, to help people evacuate, to take care of the population that's being affected by whatever natural disaster or crisis is hurting them. Not only that, but the PLA engages in construction projects as well to rebuild the infrastructure, and whether it be residential infrastructure or, roads and transportation and waterways can get destroyed by natural disasters. They stick around after and clean it up. Now, this is such an interesting contrast to the United States because, of course, our troops are busy occupying the Syrian oil fields or occupying Iraq or doing whatever else to actually be mobilized. The National Guard isn't ever mobilized because for who knows what reason. The only time they are is usually to prevent people from looting and protect private property from the people who are in absolutely desperate situations. And there was a lot of that during Hurricane Katrina. Also by the police.
Let me add one thing to that. They usually only send the National Guard when it's giant chains and corporations being looted, by the way. When it's small businesses that actually need protection that are getting mixed up in that, they don't send in anybody.
Right. And how easy would it be to mobilize the U.S. troops and send them to this region, especially if we didn't have, over 1,000 military bases overseas and U.S. troops stationed at every one of them, especially if they were home actually doing defense rather than offense on behalf of the capitalist class. But what's so crazy is not only that, the California state government and U.S. federal government has failed in their response, while China, does the exact opposite when they face similar things. But in addition to that, Gavin Newsom and the California government and the fire department sent equipment and firefighting equipment and donations to Ukraine to help the war effort in Ukraine. So they had extra firefighting equipment, and rather than giving it to the U.S. military so they could fight fires here at home in an area where over 100,000 people have been displaced from their homes now, which is the statistic in Los Angeles. Instead of doing that, they shipped them to Ukrainian soldiers who are fighting a proxy war on behalf of the U.S. and who are now, because Ukraine has run out of a lot of their frontline soldiers, are just random people being drafted, taken off the streets and sent to the meat grinder of the front lines against the Russian army. But this is where our resources are going, including the resources of our disaster relief people, our firefighters. We're sending them to Ukraine. So real quick, before I let these guys go off on this issue, I'll play my video that I did about it earlier. Except it's quiet. Oh, it's muted. That's right. The military. Did you know that in China, when there's a natural disaster, they mobilize the military to respond to it and help people out? I've been thinking about that a lot lately as I look at the devastation that people in California are suffering due to these wildfires. Why not mobilize the military to help people get evacuated and to fight the fires? But instead of having the California Fire Department give equipment to U.S. soldiers so they can help out, they had them send equipment to the U.S. proxy war in Ukraine. All of these human and material resources are being wasted on endless wars abroad when they could be used to help people here at home. Meanwhile, the Chinese People's Liberation Army isn't fighting any wars around the world, and they rapidly deploy anytime there's a crisis. Not only that, but they help with the aftermath of the crisis, say building people new homes after they were destroyed. And we know the U.S. isn't going to do any of that. Our troops are too busy occupying Iraq or the Syrian oil fields. I mean, we deployed military and police forces after Hurricane Katrina, but there were widespread allegations of them targeting looters, pew-pewing people who just lost their homes instead of helping them to get resettled. The priorities of our state and local governments are so twisted, it boggles the mind. This is the end result of a society that puts capital over people. Did you know that in China? And someone says, they would need to be trained in wildfire protection, but then train them in that. Train them in that. Train them, like the National Guard. A lot of my friends are in the National Guard. They literally sit at the barracks every weekend and just sweep the barracks. They don't do shit. right? They could be doing wildfire training. I told this to my friend who's in the National Guard. I told him what China's army does. I'm like, they do construction projects, they build roads. And he goes, bro, why are we not doing that? Why do we not do that in the US? I'm like, because they don't care. They want all of your energy to go towards being a killing machine for brown people who are where the oil is that we want.
I just want to pull this up real quick to hammer out part of what you've been saying. Just like it's not the case that you just so happen to have very extremely disgustingly rich people and the vast majority of humanity poor. That's it. It's not just the case that one exists and the other exists and there's a contingent relationship between them, that it just so happened that's the case. No, it's because you have this many poor people that you have this person that is disgustingly rich, right? Just, in the same way that that's a necessary relation, that one implies the other and vice versa. It is also the case that it's not just a contingent relationship between the impoverishment of the American people at home and the imperialism that the US does abroad. These two images are interconnected. They're dependent on each other. It's on the basis of the lack of care that the US government has, because it's a capitalist government, the lack of care that they have for their people, that they can then go ahead and feed off of the republic to fund the imperialism that they do abroad. The fires in California are not disconnected from the genocide and the complete destruction that we have seen in Gaza and Palestine as a whole. In order to carry those heinous acts of inhumanity out abroad, we need to have a condition where not even the slightest semblance of care is given to the American people. And that's why we should realize that it's essentially the same fight. The same people that keep us impoverished, indebted, and desperate here at home, the same people who don't bat an eye when a hurricane floods all of our communities and destroys them, or when a fire destroys them. It's that same class that is using the resources of our state to fund a genocide abroad, to fund proxy wars that are literally, that are utilizing literal Nazis in order to achieve their ends. It's the same struggle. We're in the same fight as the Palestinians. We're in the same fight as the Russians, pushing back against imperialist NATO encroachment. And that's the dimension that we have to have, because we have had a history in this country where part of the organized labor movement was complicit in a lot of the acts of U.S. imperialism. And that's clearly a form of false consciousness, because you stab yourself when you allow your state to stab, our brothers and sisters abroad. And I think this powerful image that was put together by our comrade Jackson Hinkle, it gets at the heart of the matter of, the fact that, as Michael Parenti said, the empire feeds off of the republic.
100%. The bombs that are launched in Palestine land in Chicago, in Detroit, in Cleveland, in New York. A lot of the time, when we talk about this relationship between our people being impoverished and what they spend on empire, people think it's like we're saying, oh, they're only rich because we're poor. Like it's a comparison, right? Like the word rich only has meaning because poor has meaning. That's not what we're saying. The function of capital accumulation in the 21st century is such that they need to extract from us to continually fund that kind of stuff. That's why we all get thrown into debt, right? I forget what I was about to just say. Crap.
Well, that's all right. I'll respond to this super chat real quick if you want to try and think of it. Thank you, Michelle Vincent Corbeau. My family's anti-communism came from conservative ideas of it being anti-work. But I've read some, and I see that the model communists promote good work more than conservatives. Read before criticizing. Absolutely. But Marx, goes as far as to say work is like life's prime want, or labor is. That's how humans interact with the world around us. And we take the world and the resources of the world and transform it. This is like the creation of art, transform it in our own image or based on this image that we have in our mind that we want to create. And that is ultimately what humans want. And through capitalism and the division that is created between mental and physical labor, and the alienation from the work process that happens, that real fulfilling, productive labor is stripped from us. And labor just becomes something that you have to do for a certain time period, not laboring as long as it takes you to get the job done in a high quality way, but you're trying to rush everything as quickly as you can for the capitalists. And, the assembly line disjoints the labor process and makes it increasingly alienating for people.
Yeah.
And, this is what communism looks to abolish. We look to bring back the unalienated labor. Having labor be seen as something positive and something where when you go to do it, that you're contributing to the community, not just your boss's pockets. Especially with all these like service jobs that we have nowadays that can be automated.
100%, brother. And it's about owning what you create, what your labor creates too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having that process actually create something for you rather than having it already belong to someone else. I remember what I was going to say now. I was going to share this, by the way, because that's such a brilliant post from Jackson showing what our government does. And I wanted to show what the Communist Party does instead. And so this is a repost from our chapter in California, right? And I just said that when the government fails you and when your boss fails you, when the banks are closing in like vultures and you don't know what to do, look for the red banners because the ACP has your back. And if you look, I went to the wrong one. Oops, hold on, guys. Here, we'll do this. Sorry. Give me a second. There it is.
What?
This. Sorry about that. This is what I was trying to show. That the read it. LA has burst into flames and the American Communist Party leapt into action. We've been helping aid our communities through this catastrophe. The party's mission is to lead this country in troubled times like these that will never change. And they're showing video of going through some of the evacuated people, right? This kind of stuff happens all the time in our country. All the time. And the government just throws us away like trash, right? You think our bosses are going to help? What about those giant billionaires like Elon Musk who pretends he cares about our country? Where is he? Where is all the technology the better men at the companies he owns have created? Nowhere.
Yeah, I should have. I didn't see that ACP California tweet. I should have shared that in my TikToks because I knew we were planning on mobilizing some people, but it looks like the chapter took matters into their own hands and we're ahead of even where we were at. So that's great to see. I should have been promoting that on TikTok to show, this is what a Communist Party does. And in many ways, we're following in the footsteps of what the Communist Party of China does. Sure, we don't have state power. We don't have the ability that they do to mobilize the country's resources to do disaster relief. We just don't have that kind of wealth and power and control yet. But still, it's the same thing. We show people that we're there for them when the government is not there for them. We serve the people in the same way that they do, or at least, to the best of our abilities, to the best extent that we can, which is lesser than them right now because they have 100 million members and whatnot. But that's how it starts. A single spark can start a prairie fire. Maybe it's a bad time to use a prairie fire analogy, but
they started with 20 dudes in a basement.
Right. Oh, thank you, Red Maze. Keep your head up, Comrade Noah. Shop around. Don't quit, but don't wait till the last minute to talk to other prospects. Yeah, Noah's been all over that. Thank you so much, Red Maze. Appreciate your support and the words of encouragement.
It's if you're a logical person, if you're driven by common sense, you look at the situation that we have and you ask yourself, how much longer until something pops off? You can't have this level of tension and not imagine that something is going to happen at some point. It's just like, the commentary around October 7th. even the people that had, you know, a somewhat ambiguous relationship to how they felt about October 7th, there was a lot of people that were rational enough to understand that you can't put people in that condition and not expect something like October 7th to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I think in the US we're in a similar boat. It's a question of not if something's going to happen, but when is it going to happen? Because these contradictions cannot keep intensifying in the way that they are, and nothing happened. I mean, the people are getting seriously tired, and the way that I see it, there's two sorts of futures that Americans can embark on in order to move away from this nightmare. We can either fall into tribalism and have a sort of warlord era where all hell breaks loose, or we can have an organization like the Communist Party, which unites people instead of dividing us on the basis of race or sex or religion or ethnicity, whatever else it might be, and unites people on the basis of a common program rooted in the fact that we share the most fundamental things. The most fundamental things about human existence we share as regular people who have to work for a living and who are in debt. So that statement that Eddie made, we're not in power yet. I think that that yet is the key. It's very possible. Every revolution seemed impossible until it was done. It always seems impossible until in actually doing it, you realize that it was possible the whole time. And I think we should remember that.
They told that to the French revolutionaries. They told them they were crazy, that monarchism was there forever. We have this tendency to look at the way things are as static, and the ruling class really tries to reinforce this false view of how things are, right? That nothing can ever change. This is just how things are. Look at the silly, issues they have around like capitalism just being people trading. If you expand it to cover everything, then it can't ever change. But the fact is, things are always changing, and we can just take one look at history and see that societies go through a process of development based on how they reproduce themselves, right? How they interact with each other. In the capitalist era, that's through commodity production and exchange, right? And so all through history, we see the way it works going through this process of change and development until it can no longer keep going on. And what happens then, right? You either get a revolution based on those developments and something new happens, or it falls apart, it crumbles, right? So I really think how are we not approaching this time in America? I mean, I say this all the time. According to the most recent numbers I've seen from Forbes, 78% of Americans struggle paycheck to paycheck right now. Right? According to Michael Hudson's calculations, over 90% of us own zero or less than zero, meaning we're in debt. Right? The government is getting into a position where they are giving us so many weird sort of misdirections that they're getting jumbled up. Our technology has already outpaced our relations of development or production, rather, right? We have AI, we have self-driving cars, we have all this stuff that makes half the jobs we're doing right now obsolete. So why do we have them? Why don't we reduce those to simple oversight? Let people play on their phones all day and watch the machine. Right? Why not?
I mean, think if people deny that we're living in revolutionary conditions, California already had a housing crisis. They had a homelessness crisis. This is what you hear MAGA people and conservative people talk about all the time, and they're correct. that Gavin Newsom and the U.S. federal government and the Democrats aren't doing anything about all these homeless people and all these people suffering from drug addiction in California.
Except
Now-
hiding them when Xi Jinping comes here.
Right. Now, right, they just sweep them to the side. They take in a giant broom and just move all
Which
the
is what they
homeless.
talk,
that
what
cartoon
they
ring
say
of
about North
lemons.
Korea.
Yeah.
Remember that movie, The Interview? It's like, that's what North Korea does.
But now you have 100,000 people who are displaced from their homes, and many of those people are going to have no home to come back to. And you really think like the housing insurance companies in California are going to take care of all this and make sure that everybody's stable and doing all right? You know, give me a break. There's absolutely zero chance. So this is going to create a massive crisis. It's going to create massive unrest in California. And if you take away people's housing and their basic means of subsistence, that's where they get to a point of sheer desperation. You know, a point where they're ready to, you know, sacrifice everything in some kind of struggle against the state that's screwing them over and left them with nothing. And that's a situation that, you know, a lot of people in our country are being pushed to. And natural disasters or economic crisis or any form of social crisis is only going to exacerbate it and push us closer to a civil war or a collapse.
No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, Marx and Engels said in the manifesto, proletarians of the world, you have nothing to lose but your chain. Well, in the 20th century, in the US specifically, we kind of had a lot to lose. We owned the house, we owned the car, we had a nice big family with a wife, 2 children, 2.5 dogs, or something like that, which is Noah's classical joke. There was stuff to lose for a certain moment, but now
2.5 dogs and a bag of bananas.
yeah, there we go. Now it's getting back to that point where, you know, yeah, fuck, man, I don't have anything to lose. All I have is a bunch of debt, which are the chains of today. That's literally all I have. All I have is less than nothing. I have debt. And that's a scary position for a ruling class to be in when the population that you're ruling over has nothing to lose. You know, they have even less than nothing, right? Which, you know, not to invoke Zizek, less than nothing. It's a predicament that, you know, us communists should take on cheerfully, because it's how we know that the historical stage has opened up for us to play the role that history has given communists, you know, to push history forward. And you can't do that without the people. This is what's so infuriating about the old left, that they thought that they can change the world just through their, you know, little small sector, through their small stratum of radical professionals. They don't change anything. You know, the only thing that they can change perhaps is their identity and how they identify themselves in terms of gender or whatever else. They can't change anything that's substantial. And they showed that they couldn't do that, because there's been objective conditions in this country for a long time, and nothing has happened. Nothing has happened. Communism has never become anything close to a topic that's discussed at the kitchen table in any way that's beyond just the regular old McCarthyite dogmas. But now that's becoming the case. Now that's becoming the case. Now the most viral person on Twitter, the most politicized app, or one of the most viral people, is a person that's in the secretariat of a communist party, of the Communist Party. If you don't see that as an extraordinary development, and if you don't see how that is fully connected to the fact that we are once again approaching a situation where workers have nothing to lose but their chains, you can't have all of those components together and not realize that something's got to give at some point. Now, it's not fatalistic. You know, it's still dependent on human agency and human actions. We have to actually do it. We can't just sit back, put our hands in our pockets, and expect it's going to happen. But what's guaranteed, what is determined, is the fact that conditions are going to continue to arise where we're forced to act, where we can no longer stick around with our hands in our pockets and decide not to act. You know, agency itself is going to be given a push. And that's what Hegel's cutting of reason is. You know, it's history has this logic, this tendency, this development, this process that it's going through. And at certain moments, whole peoples and great individuals whom he labels as heroes, they end up, whether they know it or not, aligning what feels like their own individual agency with the trajectory of history. And that's the process of the cunning of reason, where we end up becoming what Hegel called agents of the world's spirit. And I think we're approaching those moments in America.
We definitely are. And I want to go back to having nothing to lose but our chains again, right? During the 20th century, something new happened. A middle class came about out of the working class, out of the proletariat. And then as things keep developing, remember we were talking about always being in development, technology developed. We get this PMC, we get this middle class. And this is exactly what Carlos was talking about. The liberals who call themselves left that don't change anything come out of this class, right? This is why they don't change anything. When they look at the real working class, they hate it. And I want to pull up a comment from someone who's actually a troll, but he said something remarkable that that I think is slightly almost correct. He says Americans will never become communists, but they are moving towards a MAGA collective Americans, right? This is only said by people who just don't understand what communism is, right? What you're describing, this MAGA collective Americans, that's communism. That's the working class becoming revolutionary. You've just been, what were we saying like 20 minutes ago? You don't believe the media about everything else, yet you believe them about communism? Come on, buddy. Think for yourself. You're smarter than that. Also, yes, that is a Hoffner, for whoever was asking.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of people who think Americans will never accept socialism, but now socialism has become more popular with the younger generations than capitalism. They have a more positive association with the word, and that's because capitalism isn't working. And because, one of the rules of the universe is that everything is subject to change. Everything is in a constant state of flux. And over time, things do tend to become their opposite or to transform into their opposite. So, an anti-communist America, with time, with the decay of capitalism and with real concrete organizations like ours who are on the ground reaching millions and millions of Americans with a communist message, anti-communist America can become pro-communist America. I mean, nobody thought the Bolshevik Revolution was possible in 1905 Russia, but things happened very quickly, and we're at a stage of crisis, of compounding crisis. There's all sorts of different crises, whether they be natural disasters or economic or housing or debt, foreign policy crises. All of these things are compounding on each other and stacking on top of each other. And people are sick of it, which is how we got Donald Trump in the White House, which is how we almost got a socialist, Bernie Sanders, as the Democratic candidate, and they had to rig the election against him. Right? People are willing to throw themselves behind any kind of anti-establishment political force. Now, Trump, a lot of people throw themselves behind Trump, but they're about to see that Trump ain't going to do shit. That Trump is from the same capitalist class that he's promising people to fight, or that he's going to fight. And we're already seeing this with Elon Musk talking about, the H-1B visas. No, it's okay. Mass immigration's cool as long as I'm profiting from it. And MAGA people said, hell no, fuck you. These are undercutting our labor markets and getting us paid lower wages at our jobs. So a lot of people are beginning to see that MAGA is not the anti-establishment ideology or political force that they thought it was. And they're going to be looking for something new. Something like MAGA communism, which, is why in recent years we've really seen the brilliance of that strategy, right? And reaching directly to MAGA people and saying, sure, vote for Trump now, but once he fails you again, once he fails you for another 4 years, you need to start looking for something else and start looking for something deeper. And by that time, we'll have many more people in the ACP. We'll have many more people listening to the Midwestern Marx Institute. We'll have many more people who are a part of my ACP media department who have skills and abilities to push out this information and this education all across the country. And it's going to build into an unstoppable force. And it's a perfect time for Americans to see that. Now is the time for communism in America to, at the very least, start planting the seeds of its later growth.
Carlos, let me say one thing real quick. Every time I talk about Trump failing to change anything, the people that have put so much effort and energy into it, I get it, right? I get it. They go, well, maybe he just couldn't. He had Bolton around him and all these other sleazeball neocons, right? It doesn't matter if he would not or could not. It's one of the two. Either way, the result is the same. If you want change, we got to do it ourselves as the working class. And no, yeah, go ahead, Carlos. Sorry.
No, I think you were going on a good roll. I see someone in the chat talking about an Aryan collective.
Yeah, I
He's a
wanted to mention
Patriot
that.
Front guy.
That's that troll guy. Let me just say, if you think Jeff Bezos, the people at Bilderberg meetings, the people that go to the World Economic Forum are gonna have solidarity with you because you're an Aryan and they are more similar to you than the black dude working next to you, you are fucking stupid. Fucking stupid. And
Period.
don't give me the Jews everything. Like, how do you not just look up the things on your images, you fucking moron? Like, one source. You look to one primary source, and all of those things dissolve immediately. You have to be so goddamn stupid to believe that. Like, just look something up. Jesus Christ. Think, be a man.
The capitalist
Fucking
class
retard.
never divides itself by color. That's just not ever the case, as Winston teaches us, and we can't afford that either. The only race that matters here is the working class race, if you even want to consider that. Nothing else matters. What matters is what you do in order to survive. Are you an owner? Do you own and exploit people? Do you trap them in debt? Or are you a worker? Are you forced to work and now in our age forced to take out debt in order to survive? That's the only divide we're interested in. And I see he was banned. I don't know. I would have.
I just put him in a timeout.
Okay.
He can still listen.
There's
to sit in the corner and think about what he's
Yeah,
done and think about all of the capitalists like Bill Gates who aren't Jewish.
Give him the Dunes hat. You know, it's an interesting point that he's bringing up. You know, about the Germans being collectivist.
Collective.
That's a weird framework to operate by. It's one that's rooted in bourgeois discourse, and that bourgeois discourse is very comfortable with, and it wants to drag people into that framework of either collectivist or individualist, just like it likes to drag people into the framework of either centralized or decentralized. But the thing is that even if you break it down to the level of the words itself, the word contains, not externally, but within its own self, its opposite. You can't think about something being centralized without thinking of that which is the not center, that which is the decentered. In the same way that you can't think of the decentered without thinking about the center. In the words itself, you have the presence of their interdependency and their unity with their opposite. It's the same thing with collective. You can't think about the word collective if you don't think about the individual. And you can't really think about the individual if you don't think about it in terms of being sustained and given rise to out of the collective and being, you know, sort of the foundation for the collective in another sense. So such that their relationship is one of interdependency. Each needs the other. And when we have that understanding, it becomes so foolish to talk about, well, communists and fascists, they're collectivists, capitalism is individualist. It's, you know, for the vast majority of individuals, capitalism is not individualist for them. It's only a specific type of individuals that it is individualistic for. It's the bourgeois individual. That's the only individual that flourishes as individual under capitalism. The vast majority of people, they don't have individual freedom. Where the fuck is their individual freedom? They're enslaved. It's only a very small percentage of people under the capitalist form of life, a very specific collective, a class, that has individual freedom. Now, in a society like the Soviet Union or China, where the vast majority of people are much freer to do with their lives what they want, to pursue whatever they want, that are not presented obstacles that are economic in character, that can flourish and be the fullest form of human being they want to be, is that not a society that upholds the individual much more? Is that not a society where the vast majority of individuals are freer as individuals, at the same time as the collective is also upheld over and above the interests, the private interests of those who have capital? So this framework of either collective or individual is stupid. It's very stupid. It's based in what Hegel called the understanding, in a false, in a stifled, one-sided way of looking at the world. If you're thinking dialectically, you realize that it's not the collective or individual, but a different series of relations where they're each represented. And in socialism, both the collective and the individual is upheld in a way that recognizes how each is necessary for the other. And that's not what Nazi Germany was. Nazi Germany was propped up by finance capital. The same interest that they claimed to criticize was the one that propped them up. And they represented neither the collective, because the German people were suffering as well, nor the individual. They just represented, like every other form of the capitalist form of life, a small collective, a specific class of individuals.
You know what drives me
Yo,
crazy?
Noah, before you start, I have
Yeah.
to head out to go to practice, but it was great streaming with you guys. We'll see
Always,
you.
brother.
Thank
Have a
you,
good
everybody. Patreon.com/MidwesternMarx.
See you, brother.
See you later, brother. You know what always drives me like absolutely out of my mind? They pretend that the form society takes on is some choice we have, right? Are we going to have an individual society or a collective society? It's just stupid to think of, right? Think about it this way. We were talking about everything being in development earlier, right? The collective is what shapes and determines what an individual looks like within that collective, right? Every society is already a collective and it already contains individuals. So you get, as I'm growing up with American customs, the English language. In Ohio, the geographic region, I'm buying American products. I have American family. Everything is contained within this collective, right? And me as an individual, as I become this thing and begin acting upon the collective, I'm not only part of it, right? But I'm changing it. I'm adding this individual component to it. You can't have the collective without the individual, and you can't have an individual without a collective. There's no such thing, right? I mean, they've done a ton of tests on this. Like, would children be, would they even have language if they grew up away from society and all that kind of stuff? We can look at the same thing in the way of centralized or decentralized, right? Absolutely. Think about it this way. How is China's government so bottom up decentralized, right? How do the neighborhoods decide what happens in a neighborhood, right? How do each province and the autonomous zones and all those function? They can only function in such a way because there is an incredibly strong central authority. They're both decentralized and centralized because they're decentralized because of the strength of the center. So it's always one affecting the other, right? There's no way to divorce the two. And the idea that we just pick what we like. Well, I like being an individual, so I hate you collectivists. Like, that's silly. Like, you should be smarter than that after high school, maybe. Yeah, that's fine, Carlos. We can wrap up if you want.
I don't know if you guys can hear me, but I'm streaming out of the garage, which is why I have the gloves on. No, I didn't kill anyone. It's freezing, and it seems like it's storming outside. And all I hear is I'm having trouble hearing Noah. But
We can't hear anything. So
okay.
yeah, you're good. If you want to keep going, we can, but I understand if you don't want to.
I am a little cold, but I can keep it going if we have another topic at hand. The white Bronco.
Keep going all the way to Mexico with your fake beard and whatever else OJ brought with him.
Yes.
I don't. Is anyone else here old enough to remember the OJ trial on TV? I do. I remember watching that white Bronco go, and it's weird being like from the white ghetto, right? Because the whole country was divided, white and black at this time, and it was a very weird. So Jenny Lynn is okay, cool. So it's this very weird time because it's like the new generation that is way less racist than the previous, but this really, really brought the race question up. White people thought he was guilty. Black people thought he was innocent. And it was crazy how divided it was. But I'm like white and from the ghetto. So like, I'm like, he's guilty, but I want him to get away anyway. Right. So like, I remember us watching and like, we're going like, run, OJ, run.
That's
run,
the true
OJ,
dialectical position. He's guilty, but I want him to get away with it. You know?
It's weird because something OJ once said, a very famous quote, when they were asking him about racism and if he'd ever faced racism in football, right? After college, obviously during college, he did. But he said something that always makes me think of class struggle and how we understand the Black freedom movement as a vital form of class struggle in America. He said, they were like, so do you experience any anti-Black racism? And he goes, I'm not Black, I'm OJ. And he means it as a joke, but if you think about it on a deeper level, it's kind of true.
Yeah.
Until
Jay-Z line. Jay-Z has used it.
Murder, he wasn't Black. He was hanging out with fancy lawyers and going to clubs and doing coke all night with white dudes, right? Like he surrounded himself with other rich people. He rose above that class struggle that the Black community is just in, right? He wasn't Black anymore. He was OJ until he gets arrested. Then he's Black.
You just made a line from Jay-Z make sense because he says that in one of his songs. I'm not Black, I'm OJ. Okay. And I was like, I don't get what that means. But
that's got Jay-Z's another one that's like that. He's like very, very, very pro-capitalism. And like kind of a stingy dick, to be honest.
Oh, he doesn't want to be called. He says that getting called a capitalist is worse than getting called the N-word. I don't know. It's
as someone who can't be called the N-word, like I don't know, but that seems wrong to me.
But yeah, one of the funniest moments from OJ was when I forget someone was interviewing him, some lady, and I don't know if it was I don't know what it was, but he knocks on her door and he just has a knife and he's like, and he pretends like it's a joke, and the lady was genuinely traumatized. It was pretty funny.
Did you know he wrote a book? They didn't end up publishing it. Like they kiboshed it at the last possible moment when it was going to be released. It was, I forget what the title was, but it was something like, I didn't kill her, but if I had, here's how I would have done it. And it like goes through step by step. Like I would, like that was his confession basically. But like he went to his grave, he never confessed. Yeah. RJ, thank you. He said it was called If I Did It. I wish I could have read that, man. The 90s were crazy. Like that was like the beginning of that kind of really mass social drama in this country. And it's escalated since then. You know, cancel culture stems out of the 24-hour news cycle, really, and this sort of attachment to the discourse, what we call the discourse, right? Yeah. Have you guys heard about what they did with the gloves? By the way, they like that it actually came out. So OJ had really bad arthritis, right? And he was on medication for it. Now, I also have arthritis. My knuckles are swollen up right now. When you don't take medication for arthritis, your hands swell up, your knuckles swell up. Like my wedding ring was loose one time because my hand like swells up so big, and then I noticed I lost weight. So they just had him not take his medication. So his hand was too big for that glove to fit. Like if you look at how that blood got there, it's insane to think that glove was somehow not his. And the whole like Mark Furman setting him up thing, that was wild. The racist cop. We always so in there's a show, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and without like telling the story, for some reason, one of the episodes they just start talking about who they call hero cop Mark Furman. Right? Like without explaining the joke, it makes it way funnier. So we've always called him hero cop Mark Furman because of that. But like the one of the things that the OJ trial showed me at a very young age was that the law doesn't matter, the facts don't matter, the ability to tell an engaging story matters. Because the story they told about Mark Furman and the other cops setting OJ up was insane and made no sense. But Johnny Cochran sold it. He sold that story, and he was a brilliant lawyer. And by the way, a really decent liberal activist, too. Like he was good at that. My personal opinion is that he knew OJ was guilty, but his cause for a better life for his community trumped that. And if that's what the case, I get it. I would have done the same thing in his shoes, you know?
Yeah, I mean, what you mentioned about the narrative, that's why Socrates found the sophists so dangerous, because they realized that. They said, look, there's no truth. All we have is discourse, which is, that's where postmodernism, in a way, is rooted in. All you have is discourse. And if you're even going to speak about truth or power, you have to go to discourse. There's nothing beyond that you can appeal to. But that's what the sophist position was. And they went around basically charging people to make them good at their rhetoric so that they can get ahead. And there's people like Gorgias, one of the sophists, the early ones. He would go to a town and he would say, you can bring me in a doctor. And if I get to talking, I'll convince people to let me be the doctor for the town and not the actual doctor. And, so it's I don't think we have to accept the fact that there's no truth and that truth is just rhetoric. But the rational kernel is that if we actually want to represent the side of truth, we got to get good at rhetoric as well. And that is often a lot harder than uncovering truth itself.
100%. And here's the thing. We have to get better than the scumbags and liars.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of them out there, brothers and sisters. There really, really are. With just the insane stuff we've dealt with since the founding of the American Communist Party, it is crazy the lengths they will go to the ease with which they just become pure anti-human scum that there's no low too low for them. They will dox, they will lie, they will manipulate. They will do everything in their power to prevent the actual working class, rather than the mythical nonsense in their head when they say proletariat, from organizing itself. A lot of those types, they would prefer race war. They'd be like that Nazi guy that was here earlier, but they would just say the white people are the bad ones. But either way, you see how they align with Nazis. That goal, that's the same goal. Get black working class people and white working class people fighting each other rather than the ruling class.
Yep. On the money, brother. All right. Well, this has been a very fun experience. It's been a while since we do one of these, all three of us streams, at least for the purpose of just doing a stream, all three of us, because last week Eddie and I were on your show, and then we did a specific stream analyzing Eddie's article, replying to Daniel Tutt. So this is the first one that we just do for its own sake. For those that are still watching, thank you for having stuck around. If you haven't already, make sure to sign up and subscribe to the ACP Journal. It's redamerica.acp.us. And for those that are interested, again, I'm going to link the class that I'm doing on Marxism, Leninism, where I'll be covering Stalin,
Take that class.
Deng Xiaoping, Che, Noah, some of our work that we have developed at the Institute as well. So make sure to take the class. I'm not going to offer it for an extremely long time. And this might be the last class I teach for the Institute for a while. So sign up for it while you can. There's only a few days left, and there's a few spots left. So don't miss out on this opportunity. And you get to save the recordings and refer back to them for eternity. So don't miss that opportunity.
And look, if you want to help out the Institute, we are a completely people-funded institute. Personally, I'm no longer, probably not going to be funded by my boss much longer. Midwestern, or patreon.com/MidwesternMarx. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around. We'll see you next time.
Stand up, all victims of oppression, for the tyrants fear your might. Don't cling so hard to your possessions, for you have nothing if you have no right. Let racist ignorance be ended, for respect makes the empires fall. Freedom is merely privilege extended, unless enjoyed by one and all. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The International unites the world in song. So comrades, come rally, for this is the time and place. The international ideal unites the human race. Let no one build walls to divide us, walls of hatred nor walls of stone. Come greet the dawn and stand beside us. We'll live together or we'll die alone. In our world poisoned by exploitation, those who have taken, now they must give. And end the vanity of nations, we've but one earth on which to live. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The International unites the world in the song. So comrades, come rally, for this is the time and place. The international ideal final drama in the streets and in the fields. We stand unbowed before their armor, we defy their guns and shields. When we fight, provoked by their aggression, let us be inspired by life and love. For though they offer us concessions, change will not come from above. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The international